slow to running through these things. There was a bill that was dropped in the legislature at the beginning of the session similar to this. Never got out of committee. The big picture issue is if somebody rips off your gun, tell TPD. It serves as an enforcement tool for the police department. It serves as a tracking mechanism. When guns show up at crime scenes, it will proactively identify people. They have advised TPD that their gun was stolen. If their gun later shows up at a crime scene, that they have given that prior notice to police, and so they're identified from being complicit in the crime. Question enforcement comes up, it would have to pass the reasonable person test, reasonably knew or should have known. So this is not about criminalizing people or tossing people in prison, where really what we really need to get our arms around is the vast majority of people comply with the law anyway, so adopting it sort of puts another enforcement tool in TPD's toolkit. With that, the chief is here. I know the major cities police chiefs have embraced this. The chief, National Chiefs of Police Association has embraced it, and the mayors of the Tucson Council has embraced it. So the chief would just give the basis on which the chiefs have embraced this. Then I'll just move on to the motion.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Kozachik, what I'm asking to be passed out here is a copy of the firearm violence policy of the Major City Chiefs Association, which spells out the different planks of the platform that are supported by the organization. This being one of them, and the purpose for this being that it would be an excellent starting point in a lot of the investigations involving firearm violence if we can track back to ownership or last known possession of the weapon. Several jurisdictions locally have enacted this type of law, where we would also put a lot of our efforts into the educational component of this. As we respond to scenes where there's been burglaries or thefts of items, one of the things that we could do is develop some type of flyer and handout form or adopt our mail-in form where people report items that are missing to bring to their attention that there's a special provision that deals with firearms and the benefits of that would be to help indemnify them if their firearm that was stolen or that they lost is used in a crime later on. If there's a report already that indicates that they reported to us the firearm is no longer in their possession, has been stolen, then it really helps us to eliminate them, obviously, as a possible suspect and try and go from that point forward as to where the firearm went. So I'm very supportive of this ordinance, and I think it will be a tool that will help us in the investigation of violent crime.
Thank you. Let me make one final point, and I'll move on. With respect to the issue of preemption, the state law is silent on this issue, so you can't preempt something that which does not exist. And so I would move that we direct the city attorney to draft an ordinance and bring it back.
Second.
Mr. City Attorney?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, in what Councilmember Kozachik is referring to is that there is not a state law provision requiring the reporting of officers stolen, and so this is not an ordinance that would be in conflict with the state law provision of their existing law.
And if I could ask Councilmember Scott to give the city attorney direction, assuming we ask for such an ordinance, are we looking? Is it acceptable to have a civil penalty, and if so, what kind of range are you looking at as opposed to a criminal penalty? And Mr. City Attorney, do you have guidance on that?
Sure, Mr. Mayor, members of council, that would be within your discretion in terms of fashioning the ordinance, fashioning what the penalty or sanction would be. I can't say I've looked at all of the examples of the existing codes and statutory provisions that are referenced in the write-up and exist elsewhere. But typically they have been characterized as misdemeanor criminal offenses. But in many instances they have a cap on the fine or say for a first offense, $90 to $100 fine without jail time, etc. But it would be absolutely within the discretion of the council to establish it as a civil infraction versus a misdemeanor.
And I would encourage that. The intent is not to criminalize people. The intent is to provide an educational tool, but most importantly, enforcement tool.
And Councilmember Scott.
if a person's house has been burglarized and in the quantity of things that have been taken, a gun or weapon has been taken, is it the insurance company that makes that report, therefore the person who owned it and said, these are the things that are now missing out of my home, and that includes the ones that I know about right now? Does the insurance company take that and report that to the police at this time? Or what happens to that information currently? Because will that change with this ordinance?
Chief?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Scott, it's a variety of different scenarios that come into play in that regard. Oftentimes, if you come across a person who's very good at record keeping, has a good inventory of what they own, they might be able to provide the information. But most often what we find in the case of a burglary there, people don't really find the final result of what was stolen until later as they take time to go through their items. For that purpose, we instruct them that they can either report it through a mail-in form that we will leave with them or go online and report it in that fashion. They do often work with the insurance companies as to what's done. Usually the insurance company requires the victim themselves to file the report and then provide them with case numbers so they can refer back to them.
Well, as you've said, it takes a while for some folks to notice that something is missing. Is this amount of time, 60 days, sufficient to allow for that kind of time lag?
I think that the 60-day was, and I'm not quite sure, I'm going to speak for Mr. Kozachik, I'll let him answer that.
It actually says 48 hours, but then the 60 days is for people who already know. But I think this is where we get to the language of where a reasonable person knew or should have known. That's when the meter kicks in, not when the burglary is.
Well, I appreciate that, but I do know people move quite a lot in this town. I think we still have a lot of people moving in and out, and during a move and a period of time has occurred, I just want to be sure that someone is not falling victim to an ordinance when in fact it took them a period of time to get into a place, settled in, and then notice that some things were missing one way or the other. But there's just all kinds of scenarios.
And I think I just mentioned that with a reasonable person language that the city attorney might want to do.
Because I'm just referring to your memo, it said 60 days. So you're saying, as soon, you're saying,
meter that you can actually some triggering event that starts the meter.
and so you're saying within 48 hours would be good, but you have up to 60 days? No, I'm sorry, but I missed it.
Scott,
I missed it.
The 60-day was reference to a feature that's in some of the mandatory reporting ordinances, but is not in all of them. And essentially, it's say you adopt an ordinance on June 1st. From that point forward, anyone whose weapon is lost or stolen needs to report it within 48 hours of the time they know or reasonably should have known that the weapon was lost or stolen. The element with respect to the 60 days is to give a 60-day grace period from the effective date of that ordinance for folks who within a period of time before the ordinance can come into compliance with the ordinance or prior to that before law. Whether that's included in the ordinance or not, obviously will be part of your review and decision. It's in some of the ordinances, I know it's in the Sacramento version and some of the other cities in California, but it's not a feature of all the ordinances that require reporting.
Councilor Cunningham, let's work backwards a little bit. Chief, how often do we have situations where a crime has occurred, whether it be an armed robbery or a homicide or a attempted homicide, where the gun is stolen and it's never reported stolen?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Cunningham, we really don't track that type of information. The issue being when we make an arrest, if we find something, that's a separate offense also. I'm sorry, take that back. We don't find that information until we make an arrest and we identify the weapon. Or if a weapon is found at a scene and we try and start tracking it back and we go back to the last registered owner, may have been someone who had it stolen from. And that's what this will help us do, to try and identify suspects. But we don't track the information that you just asked.
See, I think that's I was just working kind of why this made sense to me, and the reason was I was thinking about how if a weapon is used in a crime, or if you're a firearm owner and your weapon is stolen and it's used in a crime, I'd really want to be sure to report it right away. So it makes sense And so then I was thinking, well, if somebody doesn't want to report their weapon as stolen, that would make me kind of suspicious of what the motives are. So that was kind of why I was just trying to work that out in my head. I was wondering if we had any factoids where we've been able to, where we've had crimes committed, whether they be high felonies or whatever, that were used with stolen weapons, and we basically had the investigation stalled because we couldn't track. And that was kind of, I thought that was what this was to remedy. I wanted to see if we had any statistics on that.
If I could expand on that a little bit, that is exactly what part of the problem is we don't know the history of a lot of the weapons that we recover in criminal acts. This would be helpful for us from an investigative standpoint to try and piece that together. I think you hit exactly on some of the points that we're trying to show why this would be helpful to victims of crime if they have their guns stolen. It helps us a lot if we know already they've reported that they're not someone that we're going to consider as a suspect in this crime, but it's a starting point for us to go forward.
So Chief, it sounds to me like this specific, or the reasoning behind this ordinance is to help law enforcement with investigations and they've been doing their job, okay?
Yes, sir, that, and also to help people who are victims of crime to protect themselves from being accused of criminal activity when a weapon that may have been stolen from them or they may have lost is used in a crime.
All right.
Thank you, Chief.
Councilmember Favors.
Chief, we don't have a record, or you say we don't track how many weapons have been stolen in, say, 2010, 2011, 2012. Do you have a number to go track?
No, sir, we do track when a weapon is stolen as part of our burglary investigations or our theft investigations. We don't track that separate number and try and write automatically go and say I have this many weapons stolen. Where we track it is we have this many burglaries, and then it would be a hand search within the cases to identify how many of those burglaries included weapons stolen. We do know that stolen weapons or weapons when we find them that were used in a crime, and we go back and we contact the last registered owner. Oftentimes that's when we find out, well, I lost that gun a long time ago, or I sold that gun, or it was stolen, and so forth. The reason that Major City Chiefs and IACP and Mayors Against Illegal Guns come forward with this recommendation is the fact that this helps us tighten up a little bit and give us a point where we can start our investigation.
Okay, so now, can you explain the process of reporting stolen items? Further detail out from citizens that just came back from vacation, saw that he's been burglarized, and what's the process now?
The usual way is when we are contacted, if we dispatch an officer, and the officer will take the report right then. They will list the items that the victim can tell us were stolen and can provide some information on right there on the initial case report. We will then leave a form with them that we encourage them, when they do a complete inventory, to list all the items that they found that have been taken and mail that back into us. They can also report that over the internet. Some of these cases are not handled through a dispatch officer or now through our new callback unit. They can call in and provide that information.
Okay, so this is a better tool for public safety to utilize.
This helps us to track the weapons and protects the citizens. Right.
Thank you.
Councilmember Scott.
I just want to clarify that it is upon discovery of loss that you have 48 hours. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. My memory is the motion is to, do we have a motion and a second? The motion is to direct the city attorney to draft an ordinance to bring it back for review of council at a regular session. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? All right.